Summer 24 is in the books, and our September to-do lists have turned into pumpkin spice. I haven't gotten to anything. But anyway, time to get back to the Day Camp Pod, get it back on track for another season of best practices and unique insights. To get things going, we're bringing back a few of our all-stars from last season to debrief the past and look a little bit forward into the unknown. So kick back, campers, and let's do it. This is the Day Camp Pod.
This is the Day Camp Pod from Go Camp Pro, bringing you the best ideas, strategies, and discussions in the day camp industry. You can find our show notes at daycamppodcast.com.
The Day Camp Podcast is brought to you by CRS, Commercial Recreation Specialists, your go-to source for recreation solutions that will ensure that your camp thrives. Explore their website today at CRS4Rec. CRS is serious about fun. Scheduling shouldn't be so difficult and take as much time as it does. Come check out Camptivities to learn all about their scheduling tools, and they're specifically designed for camps by camp people. Save time, get rid of the mistakes, and get back to enjoying your summer. Find out more at camptivities.com. Let me tell you about CampMinder, the #1 camp database in the world. It has the most robust offerings of service features found anywhere. Every feature works together to create a full, seamless system that helps your camp office run more efficiently while giving your camp family state-of-the-art communication and financial tools. Check out the details at campminder.com.
Welcome back to the Day Camp Podcast. I'm Andy Pritikin, Director of Liberty Lake and the Philly suburbs in New Jersey.
I'm Sam Thompson from Crystal Lake Park District in Crystal Lake, Illinois.
Yeah, and Sam, you are actually not in Crystal Lake, Illinois. You are on vacation in Maine, right?
Yes, Perkins Cove.
Oh, Perkins Cove, right down the street from Barnacle Billy's.
Yep.
We are so darn jealous. And you've been there for how long now?
Since last Thursday.
And how many lobsters have you eaten?
At least probably 2.
Okay.
I've done every seafood. I think the only one I'm missing is clams now.
That's good. All right. Yeah. Well, those
I'm
are
a
good
Midwesterner. I don't get seafood. So
That's true. That's true. Yeah. If I lived in Chicago, I probably wouldn't eat too much seafood either. That's pretty smart. Not too much sushi out there either, huh? It's the glory of living on the East Coast, friends. So we are joined today by another Sam Bork, back for, I don't know, 4th, 5th time. Who knows? How's it going, Sam?
Great, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Gregg Licht, my other Southwoods partner. How you doing?
I'm good, Andy. Good to see you.
It was great seeing you guys at the Day Camp Conference, the ACA New York, New Jersey one. 200 attendees, guys. Isn't that crazy? People are yearning for this stuff.
Yeah.
I had people coming up to me wanting to know what's going on with the Day Camp Pod. How come I'm driving in my car and I'm not listening to any new episodes? So this is for y'all. All right. And then just to try,
before you
yeah.
introduce our next guest, I wanted to say something first.
Yeah, please. You can preface it.
I am a proud member of the Day Camp Pod. I come on as many times as I can. We have great conversations. The feedback I'd gotten last year from this particular group
was a great episode. That was a great episode.
Great episode that people actually sought me out to say, heard you on the Day Camp Pod. It was incredible.
99.9% approval rating.
99.9. The 0.01 happens to be joining us today. That's your son, Justin, who made it clear that he thought our last pod was one of the worst he'd heard.
Whoa. I did not say
that on the worst. I said first 30 minutes. I think that's what it was.
I'd like to look back at the text. I'm pretty sure what the comment was.
Copied and pasted the text and sent it to them.
That was a whole bunch of old white guys is what he said. And I've saved that as my screen picture, just so you know, that on my phone today.
All right. Can I save myself?
Hold on. The first 20 minutes made blood come out of my ear. that was the actual text. So, Justin, we're thrilled to have you join us today to be able to make this now 100%.
To provide some balance, obviously, right?
All right. Wait. I want to defend myself here. So it was all about camp ownership, right? And getting into camp ownership.
No, it was how we started. It was how we started our camps.
Yes. And what I was hearing was like, man, it must have been great to be in the 90s and 2000, like early 2000. Because I was just hearing a lot of things that weren't as prevalent as what's going on today. But what I want to say is my favorite part of the whole thing was when Sam casually threw in how he got a law degree. that time. That was what sent me. I was grinding. I was living on the couch, and I got a law degree. I was like, all right, that's great. But
So,
yeah,
Justin,
no, I'm
is
thrilled to be
Are
here.
those things counterintuitive? I can't
Yeah.
get a law degree
No,
while
look.
sleeping on someone's couch.
This is an amazing promotional plug for a past episode that maybe not many people would have listened to, but maybe we're getting more ears on. So
And
excited for it.
Justin, maybe a plug for a future tri-state session. that
Maybe
can
a
balance
shameless
the
plug.
generational people.
Ooh,
Maybe it is.
intergenerational. Yeah, well, all I know is that after Justin spoke to me about that podcast, I felt like one of the guys on the Muppets that was like sitting in the little box up there. Yeah, that's what it made me feel like. But so anyway, we're here to talk about summer 2024 and how it went and how we felt. And because I think, especially coming out of the day camp conference thing that we were just at last week at Riverbend, that there's a lot of positive. The vectors are skewing back up for lots of real good things. So, Sam, why don't we just start with you, our recreational professional there? How were things there, not just from you, but from the land of recreation camping?
It was good. We had the most kids we've ever had, the biggest waiting list. That's what I felt I ended up doing all summer long. And we still had staff. We had a good pool that we could keep pulling from. I had about 125 staff, which for me was big, and there were still more out there. But we have two big concerts that happen out here, Country Thunder and Lollapalooza. So those weeks were rough because you lost
Ooh.
a lot of staff during those times. But we made our way through it.
So knowing that you have those, because we have a similar thing at a place down in Maryland or Delaware, I think. Knowing that you have those things on the calendar, how do you address that when it's like you're hiring people and you don't want to find out the day before and you can't have half your staff leave that day? Like, how do you address it beforehand?
We ask in the interview, and some are honest and some are not. And then they have to fill out a sheet in advance. And if they're the last one to be filling out their sheet, we can't let them go. But I also hired a bunch of extra staff to fill in for those days and had them set up ready to go. All my extra fill-in staff that I had got absorbed into being everyday staff eventually because somebody was always off and somebody was sick and whatever. But I almost feel like I need to have a bigger pool of sub staff for next year. Just so with day camp, you don't want to say, no, you can't live your life. You can't go to a concert ever, but we need you here. I did stress that our vulnerable points are when there's subs. That's when the kids are more at risk because they're not with their normal group. They're not with their normal people. I think that did stop it for a few people. They started making dentist appointments after 4:00.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff. We have to.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that I pulled out of all the podcast episodes, is that we actually put a module in our training that literally just addresses this of professionalism and how bad we need them here and all that kind of stuff. But that said, we've certainly come a long way in the camp industry as far as you got to be here for all 39 days or whatever we say, and that kind of stuff, and being able to balance it. And certainly the first week and the last week also, I find as super important at my camp. Gregg, how about you with staff? Let's just focus on staff.
Yeah, I mean, I think our staff were awesome. I really do. Looking back, it was in many ways an extraordinary summer, best we've had since the 20 time.
So you're at the point, because I don't recall this year, but I've known you for a while now, but the few years before coming out of the pandemic, I was always like talking to Gregg at the beginning of the June and hearing that he still needed 60 staff and me having a heart attack for you. Like was it easier to recruit him this year?
No, that's not changed. No, that's not changed. Westchester County is still a tough market. And the idea of an 8-week summer remains an enigma to most people. I will say that we are up against it calendar wise, because this will be our second summer in a row coming up that it's a 9-week summer as opposed to a 10-week summer. So there's only 9 weeks between the last day of school and the first day of school. We operate within 8 of those, and we push it really late. And so we lost a tremendous amount of staff going into the final week of camp. But we make it work. This is our second summer giving 2 paid days off. And it is, I'm watching Sam just look at me with judgment. And
Can you explain that? Can you please explain this to the masses?
we went through a period of time where everybody was taking 1 to 2 paid days off, well, 1 to 2 days off, or at 70% of them were. And it just got so frustrating to manage it and to constantly have conversations about days off that we made a pretty radical change a couple of years ago and said, everybody, you get 2 days. You don't have to take them, and there's an incentive if you don't, but it has been for our staff a real game changer for a lot of people that gives them different types of flexibility, and they really appreciate it.
Wow. What is the,
Right.
wait, hold on. What is the incentive? I got to know. I want to put myself in an 18-year-old brain right now and
How do you
judge.
change the game?
Yeah.
Right. So without judgment, Sam Bork.
There's hey, Greg, this is inquisitive. I want to know.
Yeah,
Because
no,
I
I can
talked to
see
you
the look
during
on
the
your
summer.
face.
I got the feedback that you gave me.
Well, hold on.
Yes, our audience.
What's the incentive if I actually come to camp all the days and don't use my 2 days off?
Incentive is, so we have last summer was a $75 attendance bonus per week that you would get if you did not take days. And this summer it'll be $100 a
Look at
week.
Justin's face.
But I'll tell you, our numbers have stayed the same in terms of who's taking days off and who doesn't, and we build in now for everyone's days. So it's
But
it's
Greg,
not.
that's my question. If the numbers are the same, everyone's taking the days off anyway. So all you're doing is paying them for it now. Like it hasn't fixed the problem.
Less animosity.
But Andy hit it exactly. There's less animosity. There's the cultural shift is you get 2 days and use them, don't use them, but we're not going to fight about it. And what it's also helped with significantly is the 3rd day, the 4th day. We've seen that go down significantly. The staff who were taking off 3, 4, 5 days during a summer, that has really shifted downward because when you sign your contract that you get 2 days and you can plan for it.
Scheduling affects every camper and every staff member's summer. It's easy to make mistakes. It takes a ton of time. Bottom line, scheduling is hard, and it doesn't have to be. Let Camptivities help you create a balanced, engaging schedule without the mistakes and without those long days and late nights. Camptivities does it all for day camps. Auto scheduling, camper and group scheduling, electric scheduling, manual adjustments, over 60 different reports, tons of customizable settings, and so much more. So don't wait until the new year. Now is the time to find a better way to schedule and save 15% on your first year. That's right, baby. The folks at Camptivities would love to show you the next big thing in camp. So get away from your desk and get back outside and play with the kids at camp. Go to camptivities.com. As a camp director, you're a leader of your camp and a pillar in your community. When your customers put tremendous trust in you, CampMinder's powerful management software tools deliver the day-to-day task support that helps you make every touchpoint moment memorable and every summer stellar. CampMinder has the most user-friendly platform for both your staff and your parents and is backed by a team of crafty engineers and customer service associates who are constantly thinking of ways to optimize your camp's database, communication, and financial management. With state-of-the-art app for your camp families and an API available for third-party softwares, CampMinder is always evolving elite summer camp software. Check them out today at campminder.com.
So we, of course, we're 4 of us here in the Northeast, okay, and we have certain schedules and certain expectations, and kids come to camp for much longer and all that kind of thing than the rest of the country. But Greg, I have to tell you, I'm also a proud card-carrying member of WAKE, the Western Association of Independent Camps. I'm sure that they are taking copious notes about this because this sounds very Californian to me. So
I think it's Greg and I have talked about this off this podcast. I don't think it's changed. I think it's only made Greg feel better. I think it gives him less stress.
Hey, but you know what? Hey, listen, he's making it's a competitive advantage. Okay, if I'm an 18-year-old and I could work at Gregg's camp or wherever in all these different places, and they're going to give me 2 paid days off, that is absolutely a competitive advantage. So I think it's smart in that way. So just one last thing about this, Greg, because I find this so interesting. So when do they tell you these days? It's like, so I sign my paperwork in February, let's say, okay? When do I tell you normally these 2 days that I'm taking?
Well, that's going to be a big change going this year. So it used to, the idea was that you had to tell us about a week before camp started.
Boy,
we
is
could
that
make
nice.
matchups and so forth. So we went that way for 2 years. We're keeping that date. The only difference, I'm really watching Justin, your son's face.
I wish that people could see this. Justin's head is going to
Hey,
explode.
listen, this is on YouTube. You can
Oh
watch
my
this
God.
podcast if you
Right.
want. All the podcasts, all the podcasts are on the Go Camp Pro YouTube channel. It's all
Okay.
available.
Good.
We
Just
actually made a
be careful
decision
there.
yesterday that in order to actually get them paid, you will have to commit to that 1 week before camp. And we use it, by the way, when we're making matchups. That we're not putting
Yeah, of
staff
course.
together
No, you're
before.
being smart. You're being
So
smart.
it's really helpful.
Greg, week
I
4, I
will-
call in on Saturday that I'm going to have to be out on Monday. Then you're not.
No.
you're
Then
not-
that's an unpaid day. That is an unpaid day. And I will, in all seriousness, as challenging as it is, what it does is it says to people, and I think there is a significant shift in how people feel about this, that my time matters and that you are respecting the fact that I may need a 3-day weekend, or I may have my college visit, and by the way, for our adult staff too, it's been a significant thing, and we allowed it now across the board. So it's not easy, and it was a significant, huge shift for us, but it matters. And I think our staff really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
Go
All right, so-
Justin. I got nothing to say right now.
All right.
I got to hear Justin. He was taking notes. It's like he's in the vice president debate. He's Waltz.
Yeah, I did write stuff down. Look, if it works, I don't care. I really don't care.
Oh, it's Justin proved if it works, it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. That's great. I think that we are in an age, I think staff are, I had a great year. I think they're easier to recruit. I think they're more resilient. I think they're more goofy than they have been in years past. And it was a great summer. When I hear what Gregg's saying, what I was writing down was just like, we have 44 days of camp at Everwood. The average staff member works 36. And that's because they either sign up for a 34-day contract or a 39-day contract. And I hire 40 extra people than I logistically need to be able to cover everything in all the weeks. And I have that all gridded out. It's a horribly ugly Excel spreadsheet. But yeah, when the person bails a day before, the day of, a week before, whatever the absence is, I just don't pay them, Gregg. If someone ever asked me for a day off, I've never said no. I've never said no, because if you don't want to be here that day, you're going to suck at your job. The kids are going to have a crap experience. It's not going to be good for everyone. So if you need to take that day off for a dentist appointment, whatever it is, yes. And I can also replace you. And they know that because we fire people. So they don't like press their luck. So yeah, most of our staff, if they missed a day, they missed like 1 per 34 days, 2 per 39 or 44 days, but it wasn't egregious. Anyone who missed 20 days was fired because that's why they missed those 20 days. It's not like they walk all over. So when I hear the 2 personal days off, yes, if you're in a competitive, hard to recruit market and that's something you need a sell point on, great. Sounds like a logistical headache and payroll nightmare expense thing. Don't want a part of it, but if you need it, great.
Another
Yeah.
question, I think what because this is a good preview for our session. I think what works is, for what I found challenging, because I do something very similar to Justin. What I find challenging, I think what Gregg's formula helps, is our administrative staff, our older staff that have been with us, get frustrated. You know how many staff are out today? You know what's going on? So I think what it did for Elmwood is it said, yes, they can do it. They're paid. We give them the ability. You have to deal with it. So I can see from the Elmwood perspective how that just gives everyone a sigh of relief of like, this is what it is. Because at Woodmont, we're very similar to what Justin does. And my largest challenge is telling our administrators, yeah, I know you're frustrated that 3 staff are out today. You have 3 staff replacing them. And this is what we do now. This is the world we live in. It's not 2010 that everyone's here all 8 weeks so they don't get hired. It's just not what it is. So what Elmwood's done is said, not only are we acknowledging it, we're paying them, and now everyone has to buy into this and go through.
So
I
one
can
of my
see-
favorite things about what you're saying in like that situational conversation that happens is, and what I love about, like, I'm not going like young people are better than old people when I say this, but our leadership team's average age is 24.
Right.
And so it's a younger crowd who's like used to this. So it's less of like, whoa, this is so shocking. And for them, it's more of like, now it's time for me to show off. Like, you want to give me like a
I'll step
Patrick
up.
Mahomes receiver room? Like, I'm going to still crush.
Right.
It's kind of the mentality they have. And there's a lot of pride at camp, and it's a great time for pride to show with those young leaders. And they lean into it. So yeah, I think it's
the
great.
more frustrating part, which we'll all know, is when it's an activity instructor who then you have to cover their schedule. It is certainly much easier in a group. when it's your basketball instructor, 3 of your lifeguards, and those administrators have to rewrite a whole schedule, they're frustrated. That's
Well, and I
pain.
will and I will say, Sam, that was a big driver as to the reason that we did this, because it allows us to plan in a very different way. And having that ability to say, we know that we cannot have 7 lifeguards out on one day, it's just not going to work. But that did happen before. And so
Did it
now
not happen last summer, Greg? Did you
what
not have 7?
look, did we have days that we had more lifeguards than we wanted to? For sure, but
Yeah.
not in the same type of way. And we had a lot of notice. And I think that a lot of notice really allowed us. And of course, we overhire a tremendous amount. And
Yeah.
I really agree with Justin. Our leadership team is not 24 years old. We're 40 plus, and they have a different level of frustration. They just do. So yeah, I get it.
It's a great point. It's a great point. But I also feel like Justin and Sam in that I'm going to give them the day off anyway. They're not expecting to get paid. And I am really adamant that they tell me about their days before the summer or as soon as they know.
It's teachable moments. Sitting with them and saying,
Yeah.
You're going up. Your mom told you last night you're going on vacation. I get it. You're going. We can't tell you not to. But it's important that you have a responsibility to your kids and your fellow counselors that now you're leaving us in a place that is uncomfortable for all of us. So I know this may be out of your control, but in the future, for whatever job you have, you need to communicate as soon as, because I don't think your mom told you Sunday night at 11 o'clock that you were leaving Monday morning at 7 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah, and the what I would add to Justin's thing of like, I just want, if they tell me they're not coming, like they're not coming, right? I get it. But what I make sure about is that when I get that random email, or even if they tell me in person, hey, listen, I can't come in next week, or I can't come next Tuesday or whatever. I say, why? Yes, why? And you'd be surprised how many people don't. And I'm just like, why? And then when I ask, they're usually like, whoa, like, is this like personal information? He's asking me, and I'm like, no, like you signed paperwork that you were obligated to be here. Now you're telling me you're not. I'm asking why you can't be here next Tuesday and Wednesday. Oh,
So my
well,
version of what you're saying, Andy, is if they emailed me, I would say, talk to me tomorrow at camp, because given the way that Everwood works and my schedule at Everwood last year, I could see every division of staff for 45 minutes. And if you want to come talk to me, you have that ability, right? So come talk to me. I would do the whole Sam thing and go paternal on them, which I think is right to do. And I think it's our job as camp operators to do that, but that's besides the point. So we do that. And then I say, email to me, because I'm going to forget. And then I do all the SOP stuff I need to do on the back end with like payroll. I send it to the people who need to see it and absences, all that stuff. We can plan for it after. So I have that digital record of it. And most of the time they come to me in person and plead their case, and then it's the email follow through.
If someone is anywhere they are, they tell their leader, their division leader, or we say, that's fine, tell Marissa, right? Our staffing director. It all has to go through her. You can't just tell one person, unless that one person's Marissa, because she, like Justin, tracks all of it and needs to know. The other thing, just as an interesting point, we found a little bit more this summer that we were a little bit more firm on saying no to some things, meaning we had accounts who said, I have cheerleading till 1 o'clock, but I'm going to come in from 1:30 till 4. And in the past, we're saying, oh, that's great. And they're paid for the day. Now we're like, you know what? We're good. Like, do your cheerleading. We love you, but you don't help us for 2.5 hours. So go ahead and take the week, like do your thing, but we don't need you to come in for 2.5 hours. It doesn't, in their mind, they want to be there because it's social.
Yeah.
B, they want to get paid, and C, they have nothing else to do. So we became a little bit more firm of like, you know what? You can't come in Wednesday and Thursday, stay home Friday. We got you covered.
I do the same thing. Same thing if they're going to only be able to work 1 or 2 days that week because they're going on vacation. It's easier for payroll to have them miss the week, and I'm going to have to sub you for 3 days, and it'll be fine too.
Yeah.
Or
No,
I
save yourself the money.
Or I switch them to a sub for the week.
Yeah,
You lose your group because you're not there all week. So now you're subbing those other days.
That's interesting.
But it's hard for the directors. I think the hardest part for them is getting used to the changes in this and getting used to telling them, we don't need you for that 2 hours, because they were letting them make their own schedules when we really didn't need them anymore. And so getting them to be stronger to say, nope, that's fine that you're off, but no, I don't need you for 3 to 4 because we're covered. So
Right. Well, Justin did a bunch of spreadsheets and came up with some percentages of staff attendance and such after the summer. So we did it at our camp too. And we found that I think our number was 93% of it was 93% like staff attendance on days that they were supposed to be there. And we thought that was pretty damn high. And considering what we've come out of the recession, excuse me, out of the pandemic, and we've been through a few things here. That to me is really optimistic. And we had a great day camp podcast, I think a season or two ago, with Adam Wallach and Ross Coleman. That's another one that made Justin bleed through his eyeballs.
Didn't make me bleed. I just disagree. I like that.
Well, we're talking about bribing. It was bribing your staff to show up to work. Basically, that was a lot of it, right? And I took a lot from that and I applied it and I did a lot of that. I did the weekly things. If you were here for the week, you did that was Ross's. It was a lottery thing when giving away $500 and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, is it even moving the needle? I don't even know if it's really moving the needle. And what happened from it is that the people that were actually here the whole time, they were here all 8 weeks, every day. And they never won that stupid lottery. And they were friggin' pissed. They were really pissed. And I was just like, okay, maybe I'll just give something to everybody that's here every day. Like maybe they'll do that. And then last year, we had such great attendance that I ended up not giving anything to anybody because they came to work and it worked out. So that's where I'm at.
I talked about this, I think, after that podcast was part of our job is to explain to them it's a job. Right? You just like part of the job is showing up. And when I tell our staff in orientation and I talk to my peers in other fields, I say to our staff, what you don't realize is don't even think about camp. Think about working at UBS. Think about working at wherever you are. So much is just showing up because so many people now don't show up for work. They're not reliable. And so if you can learn that by being at camp, that's part of the job is being there, you're going to be successful, not just at Woodbine, Elmwood, like any of these places. You're going to be successful from here and moving forward. And that's what we want to teach you and help you.
Yeah. If we can't get people to show up for the sake of like children, then come on now, right? That's how I always joke around. I'm like, we're not working at supermarket, okay? This is like, we're taking care of other people's children here.
Brad,
All
you
right.
had something.
We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to come back and talk about the campers.
The Day Camp Podcast is brought to you by CRS, Commercial Recreation Specialists, your go-to source for recreation solutions that will help ensure that your camp thrives this summer. Check out their inflatable aqua park courses for pools or lakes, the prime carts, the cool little go-kart things, the emergency alert and lightning detection systems. Whoa! The splash pads. Whoa, if you got the money for that, splash pads is the way to go with the heat we got. The Zoom Flume, a lot less money, and talk about the most awesome water slip and slides that you could possibly get. The jumpers, okay, for bouncing all around the place. Mini golf. The prefab cabins and pavilions and bathrooms. The shade structures. Lord, do we need shade structures these days. The shade structures cannot be beat. And of course, the playgrounds, including the ones with the cool musical components. Anyway, CRS, Commercial Recreation Specialists, your go-to source. Explore their website today at crs4rec.com because CRS is serious about fun.
All right, we're going to talk about campers now. All right. So yes, staff has been on the upswing. I want to start with Gregg on this because Gregg actually has kids that are camper age. All right. The rest of us are older now. So give us the perspective, Gregg. Like how do you feel like the campers are coming out of things, considering where we were at, a couple of years ago?
When I think about this particular question, and I think about the stories, I'll call them war stories coming out of the summer, because we had some very challenging behaviors. I still say to our team, 99% of the children did remarkably well every day, loved camp. It's that 1% that just stuck with us. And we had some really challenging behaviors.
But Gregg, don't you think, you've been doing this a long time, don't you think that's just part of the course?
You know what? I think, Annie, some of the behaviors have shifted a little bit. I do think what we saw more this summer that changed for us, and not just this summer, but probably 2 summers ago in a bit of a trajectory, is just a little more violent behavior toward us. That there were things going on with hitting and not being able to control your body and things of that nature that just made it a little bit harder. I also think the way that staff respond has shifted. That this idea that you're doing this to me, So no, that's just not okay. This is a boundary that you cannot cross.
I don't feel
But
safe.
before
I don't
this-
feel safe if you're not using your
I
gentle
don't feel
hands.
safe. That's right. No, totally
Right?
true.
Justin likes that because that's a big TikTok thing, the gentle hands. They're making fun of all the people
Stop,
that talk like that.
Andy. Stop it.
But I really do think that given the right supports, most campers do remarkably well at camp. Though we have found that there are just some children that camp, or at least the way that we run camp, is a little bit too hard for.
Yeah. Well, look, there's a lot more kids on the spectrum. There's a lot more kids with issues, so it seems. But you could also say maybe there's not. And there's a lot more kids that are now diagnosed. And that too, right? And Elmwood is a camp, has a preschool, right? You're getting a lot of kids that come in kindergarten, first grade, preschool. They haven't even been diagnosed yet. They haven't even been tested yet. So they're getting they're right. So they're getting their first like real taste of social whatever at your camp.
And when
Do you
parents
find-
tell us
can I
all
ask
the
about
time,
those behaviors, Greg, I found, and I'm curious what you did years ago, I found parents less open about the challenges. Like someone would show up and we would find out that they had an IEP or something else. I'm finding parents much more open about it now because they're so much more proactive about what's happening and want to team with you versus keeping it hidden. And I see people nodding. I wonder, that's what I found is that 5 years ago, someone would show up and you're like, okay, this is a camper who needs additional help that we
And
weren't prepared for. And
I
now
think
parents are more, they're advocates.
I think they're doing better too. They're not coming from other programs that totally demoralize them.
Yep.
Because in the past, we would be the only program that was really in tune to their needs. And so they had a terrible experience. They tried to hide that they had any differences so that they wouldn't have another terrible experience. And I don't see that anymore. It seems like the other programs have caught up a little bit and are more in tune.
Yeah.
If
I find our parents really wanting to partner with us almost across the board. But the one thing that we've all had this conversation that I notice all the time are parents saying, well, in school, this is not an issue. And I believe for the most part, they are telling us the absolute truth. I think they just don't understand the core differences between camp and school. And it is very, very real. Just this idea of the amount of transitions that we put kids through every day and the constant buzz of activity around them. And for some children, it's just too much.
Too much.
Yeah. Well, if my daughter was on this call, she would be talking about all of the artificial things that people eat that is screwing them up and all that stuff and making kids crazy and all. But I did listen to a great podcast the other day. They were talking about how in California, it's now 1 out of every 22 kids that is diagnosed with being on a spectrum. So either we are overdiagnosing or there's literally issues out there. But yeah, I mean, we're a camp that takes a lot of kids with additional needs. And so we're sort of used to this. But in general, I want to go back to the thing that Gregg said, which is that 99% of the kids are just doing great. They really are. And I think that most of them were doing great when we came back from the pandemic, right? I think that the kids that were struggling were the preschoolers who hadn't had any socialization and the teens who we had screwed up like their most important social years. But now those teens are all in the workforce. They're our counselors now. And the preschoolers have gotten that socialization. So I think that we're pretty much on track. And I got nothing to say about it.
So
Eddie, I
Campers.
do think where our staff struggle the most, though, in a different way than they did 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, are with children who are struggling. I think that our staff were much more willing and open to experience kids who are struggling in a very different type of way than they are
Yeah,
today.
but-
And they're working and training on that. But it is
But like I was saying, Greg, that staff we're talking about are those kids who were
Yeah.
struggling in the pandemic. And now they're our workforce, right? So this is when I get into this argument with Justin when I say that staff have it easier today because we support them more and we pay them more than ever before. And Justin says, yeah, but think of what these staff have gone through, right? These are not the 16 to 24-year-olds from 10 years ago. They're not.
Well, I
Andy,
think that bridging this skills deficit that Greg and Andy are alluding to, you have to prioritize what problems you actually want them to be capable of solving. Because I only have so much time to teach them. So if I teach you how to be really good at 5 things, everything else has to get dealt with middle management. But if staff don't feel supported because when they bring in middle managers, they can't handle that task or middle managers aren't available for that task, they're going to feel like they're drowning because they get help every which way they look for anything that they do in the real world. And so what I think where we saw staff feel more supported at camp was we got rid of our psychologist. We got rid of one of our guidance counselor characters, but we made our division leaders, our middle managers, more actively available to triage these problems. And through that, staff satisfaction rates doubled in terms of how they felt supported and had less problems with kids because they knew how to deal with the 5 things that were super important to working with 5-year-olds. And the staff that work with 10-year-olds knew that, but everything else they did not handle because we didn't have time to trust them with training them the right way to do it. But we can with our leadership team.
Well, one of the things I really wonder, and I think about a lot, is the problems that are constantly brought to us. Are they truly problems? Sometimes there are. There's no doubt that there are kids that are going to be outside of the scope of what a camp counselor can or should be able to do. But then there are things that they are often bringing to us that I think are very much inside of the scope of what a camp counselor can do every day, which is part of the magic of the experience. Though I think there are just certain things that they say, you know what, that's not that I'm not going to allow that to be part of my job responsibility. So we're shifting too. But it's an interesting question.
Yeah, Greg, I think the point is trying to teach the counselors to ask why is that a problem? If they say we're always late to period 4, okay, so
Not a problem.
if that's what your group is, then we'll let period 4 activity instructors know you're going to be late. Like take that off of your plate of things to worry about. I always find it so interesting for staff that create their own challenges that we haven't implemented. We've never yelled at you for being late to period 4. So why is it so much on your radar that you're so frustrated? To your point, Greg, that it's understanding why is this an issue? If you're late to period 4 because your group is slow after swim, we're not going to yell at them. They're slow. Okay, we'll just let period 4 know you guys are 5 minutes late. Take that off the plate.
Yeah,
Going into last summer, we did a lot of work with our division heads about the actual division heads spending less time in the change room. They were spending so much time in the change room managing the change room because look, the change room is complicated. But we challenged when we met last winter. It is okay that your staff struggle a little bit in the change room. Like that is part of this job. That is part of what it feels like, and that there's a lot of learning to be done there too. So I think it's a real balance.
And Andy, your question about campers, I do think the joy is there and that we saw at camp where the silly programs we run, the older kids are still into it. It boggles my mind when like an 11-year-old who's been at Woodmont for 8 years still is into Gold Rush and the skit that goes on before. And I definitely saw that this summer. I think Sam raised your hand too. Of just the joy of kids of being outside. And I know we're all into this anxious generation, the book by Jonathan Haidt. I think that what we're seeing is the kids that are at camp also understand that they need to be off of their device and probably can't control it. So when they're there, they appreciate the outdoors. And
they're relieved to be off of their devices.
Correct.
Right.
So I have a new quality control agent in a camp as a camper. My grandson, who's 5, came this summer. His mom's a teacher.
Nothing better.
He didn't have to come. She signed him up for 1 week, and beforehand, he's a rule follower and really quiet. So he was very scared before he came. So we put him in a group with the one girl he knew, and she's a wild woman. And he just looked at her like, "Would you be crazy? I'm not going near you." And so it refreshed in my mind, okay, I can talk to parents now about the friend from the neighborhood is probably not the best person to put them in with. They're going to make other friends. Then you can have that relationship fresh elsewhere. And I learned a lot of things through his eyes that I hadn't really had a camper that I was that close to for a while. But the very first night when he got home, he thanked his mom for signing him up. I was like, oh, God. So, and he's not a real outdoorsy guy. Swim lessons he hated, of course. How do you get campers not to hate swim lessons?
Well, good question. How do you Savannah banana that? All right.
Can I
It's
hit-
interesting.
I-
Go ahead, Justin.
I want to hit this. I had a unique position at camp this year. I took over our special events program, which Everwood runs for 8 periods a day. So that it could filter all throughout camp, ran 8 periods a day. So I did not have a period off where I wasn't entertaining 150 kids at a time. So I
Or
would see
eat.
every
You
single
didn't
kid.
eat either.
That's true. I didn't either. But I got to see every single kid and every single staff member every single day and got to do that camp community type thing. And it was great. And I loved it, all of it. But I got to play with 4-year-olds and play with 14-year-olds and everything in between. And I think that there are the overprotectionism in parenting that is going on and the anxious parent that exists is making a subset of children more anxious than they need to be and constantly seeking validation.
Yeah.
I do just want to point that out, that that exists, and it is something that is difficult for staff, especially with 17 kids in their group. It's not, it's like a weird type of problem set that not everyone's good at. And I don't think, generally speaking, our college age staff, high school age staff are great at connecting with kids. I think they're decent at it. But when there's like this emphasis and like this over connection on certain kids who just need that type of stimulant, I think it's hard. I think it's really draining for them. And I think those are the kids that my staff struggled with the most, who are well behaved, just super anxious, clingy. And I think that's coming more and more. And I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna blame the parents and caregivers on it, because when you typically meet those folks of those children, there's a reflection of it to an extent.
Yeah.
As
And
I
I
said
just,
earlier, the apple doesn't fall far, as you just raised your hand, so did your dad. So it's okay to blame the parents because that's where it's coming from. The
but
parents-
Sam, Sam, you've been doing this for a long time. Justin could have said that 20 years ago, except that he would have been in diapers. But we would have said the same thing. There was helicopter parents back then, you know. Like yes, parents make their kids crazy, but
Wait.
there's
Okay,
parents making them crazy for years.
Okay, I don't want to talk about 20 years ago. I want to talk about right now. I want to talk about how parents are doing what their kids tell them to do, even when the kid's 7. I don't want to do this. Okay. Like that's where it's the parents aren't being as confident. I feel like, look, I could be wrong, but every podcast I listen to, every book I read is talking about how Gen Alpha kids are bossing around their parents. And then I see it at camp. Jamie told me this morning she gave a tour, and the parent was like, yeah, I don't want to sign him up for 2 weeks because she might not like it after 2 weeks. And I'm going to have to check with her. Like that's this kid's 7.
Right. I hear that all the time.
There is more of that where when we can use our experience here. When we were children, many of the answers from our parents was because I said so, right? Like that is the words that we heard often, and you don't hear that nearly as much today. To Justin's point,
there's this gentle parenting trend. These TikTok, YouTube influencer moms who tell you how to parent.
Justin,
these parents are so nervous that they want to do the right thing and not screw their kid up and keep them in this competitive edge. And they're nervous and they're anxious and they're just not doing things great.
Well,
Gentle
they're just
hands.
getting-
Gentle hands.
When the
Today's
kids are
parents, yeah.
babies, they've got these stages now all online that if your kid is not doing this at this time, they're starting to freak out. From day one on, they're comparing their kids to everyone else's kids and where are they at this point and should they be doing this? Way more than I think we used to. But the parenting too, my daughter has 2 kids. The son is quiet and very rule follower. The daughter's complete opposite. Same parents, complete opposite reactions to everything. So yes, the parents, but also some of the personality that came out with, there's still that argument.
I have a question for the group. Do you find that you're teaching your camp parents how to parent more now than you have before?
I don't know that we're teaching it effectively, but
But
I
do you feel like
definitely think it is. Hillary, my partner, and I, the conversation that we are having with parents are almost exclusively about things that are happening at home, not at camp.
And I'm not saying that we're all the best parents in the world, but I
Yeah,
do
no.
find my conversations are more.
Certainly.
It's okay for your child to fail. Like
Yeah.
they're gonna
Well, we
learn
have a lot more experience than they do. Plain and simple, right? I mean, think about when 2 people decide they're going to be parents, which first of all, they probably usually don't decide that. It just happens. And then all of a sudden they're like, I guess we're parents, right? And they get into this and they really are not trained for it. This one's an accountant. This one's some advertising person. Like they just don't have the experience. They don't have the training in it. And they're learning on the fly and all that. And I tell my middle management people who are mostly teachers and mostly parents themselves, I say, feel free to give these people advice because they're yearning for it. They want it. Right?
Do you think parents need more validation than they did 15 years ago?
Need more validation? No, I'm not talking validation. I'm talking direction.
I think they do, Andy. I think they
Direction.
do.
Yeah, but I don't know what you're calling validation.
I think direction's true too, but I think they want validation that they're raising an amazing kid and that what they're doing is right.
But I think
Joe,
I think humans require more validation. So if humans require more validation, parents require more validation. So I really don't find that parents are to blame or responsible for a lot of what we're seeing. Sure, they're a part of it, but there are so many contributing factors. We're battling phones and we're battling societal things and we're battling all this stuff, and it's going to show up at camp. Like the reality is we see children when we see them. We see them in 2024 or next summer, 2025. This is what's going on in the world, and it's our responsibility to be there for them. So while are parents a factor? Absolutely. School is a factor, technology is a factor, the crazy things that are going on in our world are a factor. So I don't just see it as a parent only piece.
And then what is our place in the world as camp directors in this? Should I be expecting in the next 15 years of camping that camp directors take on a personal brand with their camp where they are effectively childcare influencers making content that's based in brand value about how to parent kids?
Youth development
Because-
professionals, totally.
But where is that line? Where do people want to decide that line is? I think it's an interesting space we're moving into because what I love about spinning, going to spin class with 45-year-old moms, is we become Instagram friends. And then I see that they have podcasts about parenting and they're stay-at-home moms with 5,000 followers, these super micro regional influencers who talk about how to parent in South Boston, right? And where they take their kids and what is right and everything. And this is how I tell my kid no at Target. And people listen. People listen to this stuff. But these are the types of phone calls that we get in terms of like, what do we do with our kids? And so I think we're the experts ultimately, but should it be our place?
Well, I think it's always been an advantageous thing for a camp to have that, right? If you have a Gregg and Hillary that people look at with respect and can ask them questions about their kids and get like these really thoughtful responses from, like, that's an added value of going to Elmwood. And I think I've done that at Liberty Lake. And I tell all people that run day camps, like, you're embedded in the community, right? Sam has been how many years there now? 25, right? I mean, they look to you like she's a community. She's absolutely a
Thank
community
you for
influencer.
lowering that.
She's absolutely a community influencer. She is. There's no doubt about it, right?
Well, a lot of them were in camp as campers with me, so now they will listen to what I say.
Yeah, it's a lot different. We have that advantage that resident
Yeah.
camps don't. We just have that, and we should play that. And yeah, it's one thing to say, okay, well, because there's a famous statement I said in one of the first day camp pods that someone had told me that if you're a day camp director, you should be able to run for mayor in that town and win. Okay, well, that's one thing, and I get that. But I think even more important is what you're saying, Justin. I really do. Is that if your brand is that you send us your kids and we're going to make them into great humans, right? I mean, my gosh, then if you're the focal point of that, and granted, we all have teams, okay, but the people at the top of that team, right, should be positioning themselves as such, and they're putting themselves off if they don't.
No, I think that Justin, I think part of it is parents now. I think a lot of them understand that they are feeling a little more helpless and are looking for answers, and that's why they're looking to that influencer. That's why they're looking at camp, and I find some of those conversations, parents are incredibly thankful that they've gotten some guidance that they can really bite into, and that they see their child is changing in a positive way that is better than the 5,000 person influencer that's telling them how to stop at Target. That at camp, because of what we've created, everyone on the Zoom and everyone out there in the pod world, because of the structure that's there, they're seeing their kids thrive, and they're saying to us, how is this happening? What are you doing?
They're saying, hey, guess what? I went to Target and my kid actually behaved because he's been
Sure.
in camp for 4 weeks.
Great. That's what we want. And I was with a bunch of camp operators on a retreat a couple weeks ago, and what we were talking about was how do we actually double down on this as camp professionals? What camp minders, what other full-time people do we need to be put in place to do the off-season work that, like, truthfully, we aren't necessarily in the business to actually do? Like, it's not our specialty maybe, or it's not what we like. I don't want to do reference checks for a living. That's not why I decided to work in camp full time, right? Like all this stuff that we can outsource to 20-year-olds in our line of work, right? So what can we do to set ourselves up so that during this September to April, where yes, we're recruiting staff, yes, we're recruiting kids, we can also double down on what we're good at, which is growing better kids in the community that we're placed in. And that's what's really interesting to me as a young professional in camping, is figuring out more avenues, more systems that I can hire, employ fractional CFO type things to be able to focus.
Well, it's really smart, because if that's your brand, it shouldn't just be your brand for 8 weeks or 9 weeks. It should be a brand 12 months a year if you can pull that off.
And our parents want to know why we have certain policies now, because they used to just, that's their business. That's how it is. Now they ask questions, just like the kids do. So they want to hear what's behind our no phone policy and why. And so explaining the science behind it or the thoughts behind it is more important than it used to be.
So maybe we need to get better at content creation. Maybe we need to write a newsletter that we throw into an AI podcast generator that throws text on it and clips, and this is what we promote as a camp. I don't know. I'm just,
and turns it into an animated cartoon.
yeah, like
I still think,
I
and
think-
I'm not there in terms of systems and all of those things that we have more time to work directly with families. I am absolutely about, but I still believe that the summer camp experience is authentic. And the reason that parents want to be connected to us is because we can give them a real authentic take on their children and perspective on their children. So not just a podcast on generalized parenting and here are the top 5 ways to raise a 6-year-old, but actually hearing about your specific child, because we are the only people who get to see their kids in a social environment for 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks. And we become the experts along with them. So while I every so often I'm happy to write a blog post of parenting advice or what do you do about technology or here's how to get your kids out of the door in the morning, I think people are really looking for specific attention about their child. And that's the power of being a camp director. That's the beauty of this work. I think when it becomes sort of just another way to attract more kids or a marketing play, it's not going to play in the long run.
I
Interesting.
kind of disagree. I think we're saying the same thing in terms of like writing stuff and putting it out there. In terms of marketing, no one has ever came to Everwood Day Camp because of our nice basketball court. Like this is our brand. This is what we need to leverage, right? And I think that more and more Everwood is competing with Disney and a vacation and less of going to another camp. And so if we're the camp where we grow 21st century skills, where we are great for someone who just read The Anxious Generation, wants to throw up because they're a parent of 2 kids, we need to leverage that. And I think camps are going to turn more into youth development type programs with the chat GPT, where we as a society have to decide what we actually determine is valuable to teach kids when it's all accessible, right? But teaching these foundational skills is what our industry should be. And whether we have to like edutain it through camp, that's great. That sounds great. Sign me up. That's what I want to do. And I want to make sure people know that when you come to Everwood, you leave with these things. And here's a blog post, here's a this, here's a that. Send your kid here and we'll get to learn your kid and know their name and know all about them. That sounds
I like to
fantastic.
imagine that 40 years ago, people were saying camp now more important than ever. And 30 years ago, people were saying camp now more important than ever. And 20
Every
years
year.
ago, they were saying
Every
like 10
year.
because I think it doesn't change. I think
It's the most important election of all time coming up.
That's right.
Justin, I do have to tell you, I finally got out of onboarding hell and we have an online onboarding system that's just starting up. So I won't have to try to drag them out of state or have them mail me, which they never know their zip codes stuff. It's all online. now.
Welcome to the 21st century.
Yay!
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
All right, folks. Any closing
Sam, you're
thoughts?
awfully quiet back there.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I listen. When my time comes, I interject and give my moments. I'm happy to be a part of a group of like-minded individuals that are all here for the same reason. And I think it was good dialogue. We didn't go on Andy's outline. We got to about number 1 and then
So a lot of people listening to this podcast, they probably know that we had a crazy situation that happened at Liberty Lake this summer. And I'm not really going to talk about it much until I'm allowed to. But I just want to say that the staff, when people talk about, and Justin for the last couple of years has been on this podcast saying that these younger people, they are tough and they can do a lot and a lot can be expected from them. And we really saw that this summer when a crazy tragedy took place and they just stepped up the next day and really rose to the occasion and showed a whole lot of strength and resilience. So I just want to sort of tie it up with that and get back to the staff, because it really, the Day Camp podcast has been probably 80% about staff ever since we started, right, Sam? Sam, is this our 6th season? Do you
It
even know?
is.
It's our 6th season?
6th season.
Yeah, we had a nice little ride before the pandemic started.
But Andy, I think we saw that too at Woodmont as our 16 and 17-year-old staff this summer, I think more than ever, were highlighted as just incredibly strong, competent, mature beyond their age given years. where they just got it. And we're lucky, many of them have now grown up at Woodmont, so they're becoming counselors after being campers. But just seeing them in that ability to be mature and handle it and handle tough situations, and they get camp. And a parent will ask me, like, how old are your staff? Like, you know what? The age is less relevant, because a 17-year-old who knows camp could be significantly better than a 25-year-old who is a teacher and thinks that school should be camp, and vice versa. So let's not worry about age. Let's worry about experience and background with kids, because I do think that was something that we saw more of this year than before. I see Justin's nodding. So is that?
I agree. I love it. You're preaching the gospel.
I also
Agreed.
think one of the challenges that camp directors have is that we are always focusing on the 1%. I talked about it with campers. There's this 1% of campers who were really challenging, but 99% of them love it. That is totally true about staff as well. I mean, at the end of the day, most people are remarkable at this job, love doing it, make an extraordinary impact, which is why I continue to show up every day.
Yeah, no, they inspire me. There's no doubt about it. All right. Well, I want to thank Camptivities, commercial recreation specialists, and Campminder, and the folks at Go Camp Pro for allowing us to bring this podcast to you. If you like what you hear, you should subscribe to the Day Camp Pod on your favorite podcast platform. Check out the show notes from all of our episodes at daycamppodcast.com. Remember, you can watch these shows on YouTube as well. And check out with the show notes the contact info for our show, for our guests, Sam Bork, Gregg Licht, Justin Pritikin, and of course, myself and Sam Thompson. Thanks for listening and making yourself a better Day Camp Pro. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another episode of the Day Camp Pod.
The Day Camp Podcast is brought to you by Go Camp Pro and the Go Camp Pro Podcast Network. Find a podcast for camp professionals of every age and stage at gocamp.pro/podcast. Thanks for listening, friends. Hey, Camp Pros. We love that our industry is built on sharing. In order to foster that spirit, we hope that whenever you share an idea that you learned from the Camp Hacker podcast, conference, summer camp professionals group, or wherever else, that you're quick to give credit where credit is due. That way, we can all encourage more camp pros to share the tips and tricks that will make camp better.